this is just my idea of processing shots in mono. It's not necessarily the best way of processing them. There's almost certainly better and different ways of doing this. But I mean, I suppose any photo processing, it's a kind of an art, isn't it? And it's you do what you think is right. So as I go through, certainly with the ones that you guys have sent in, if you like where I take the photo is different to where you would have taken it, then jump in and tell me that, and we'll try reprocessing it a different way, or we'll look at, in a few cases I've got the before and the after shot based on what you processed as well. So so let's have a play with some of these, and I'm going to start with this one, which is one that Sandy sent in a while ago, and so I've taken it right back. I asked her to send me the raw file, so I've just put the other one away. I can't really remember how Sandy had processed it. And this is obviously a couple of rhinos. I don't know where, but Kathy said, look for contrast. This, I think, is probably taken middle of the day, and I would think it's middle of the day because I'm reading the light in the image, and you need to develop this skill as a photographer to read the light in the image. So where's the light source? Well, the light source is the opposite direction to the shadows. Okay, so the shadows are kind of pretty much underneath, aren't they? And we've got the brightest areas. Look at this top of this rhino's head here. The light's coming pretty much straight down because the underside of his head is dark and the top side of his head is light. So we've got the light very high in the sky. This isn't early morning side lighting. This is mid morning, you know, noontime, probably the hottest part of the day, which a lot of photographers think is the worst part of the day to shoot in. But for black and white work, actually, paradoxically, it's one of the best times of the day to shoot in. Because if you are looking for contrast, if you're looking for hard light, then middle of the day is a good time to shoot. Yeah. It also has the added benefit that you don't have to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning, which is great. Yeah, because I'm not good at 4 o'clock in the morning. Not with young children. So we're in the library module. So let's just pop into the develop module. and as always with my editing, the first thing I would do is I would crop, because by cropping you are then leaving yourself with a composition which you can then work on in terms of the tonal range. But by cropping the image, you're going to change the histogram and you're going to change the tones that are in and outside the image. So I'm going to hit R for crop. And to me, this one would naturally go to more of a panoramic crop because there's nothing happening up at the top. There's quite a lot of wasted area here. And I want to make the 2 rhinos as big as possible. And I think that's probably the tail there. So we've got quite a bit of room that we can crop in. So let's just try going to 16:9, which is the standard kind of widescreen TV crop. Okay, so that's one of the formula crops in Lightroom. And then if we just pull down a bit and just see how big we can make the 2 rhinos. Now, I'm very, very willing to be led by Henry on this one in terms of composition, because he's always kind of stressed to me the need to kind of balance unsightly elements and stuff like that. The way I'm thinking on composition here is I'm trying to make the rhinos as big as possible in the frame because they're the subject. Okay, I certainly wanted to eliminate that top left-hand corner, that twig, because that was really bugging me. But this is kind of, we've got to keep this because we can't get rid of it, because we could just about get rid of it, but now we're too close as far as I'm concerned. So I'm thinking something like that would probably work for this crop. we've got this line taking us out of frame, but I don't know there's anything else we can do about that. Henry, are you with me on this one, or are you thinking of any other composition here?
Well, no, you spot on there, but remember, monochrome essentially would be an open category, and in this case, you would be able to remove and clone out those offending parts.
So you could take this out? Yeah.
In mono, I would, yeah.
Would you leave this in?
Yes and no. I would more than likely remove the branch behind the male.
These two, yeah.
And I think there is a big trunk, and it sort of almost stops you from leaving the image and going back to the rhino. And it sort of follows the contour of the horn. You can look at it in many different ways.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, let's go with that as a crop then. So what we've done is we've eliminated a lot of the sky. We've left enough of the foreground to kind of, provide that layer leading in. And then, as you say, we're probably going to do some cropping work in a minute here. But let's just flick it into black and white and just see what that does in terms of just removing the colour, which is what Kathy was talking about earlier on. And I don't know why it's not actually doing it. I could do without my machine. Ah, there we are. Without my machine going on go slow tonight. So there's quite a difference, isn't there, straight away? I mean, the difference between the colour rendition there and the black and white rendition is quite striking before we've even touched the image. Yeah? But just doing that is almost never enough. Okay? It's not just a matter of pressing the black and white button, because what we need to do now is we need to work this image. We need to work the different tones in the image and see what it is that we want to do with the image. Okay, where do we want the eye to fall? Where do we want the eye to rest? And where do we want the eye to, not go, and stuff like that. Now this is a difficult one because we've got bright foreground, we've got dark center, and then we've got, dark, light, lighter background. So we're almost flicked around from the normal thing of you want the brightest thing in the picture, not to draw the eye away. In this case, the subject is actually going to be the darkest thing in the picture. Okay, so that can be quite tricky. So we're just going to have to run with that and see what we can do with it. Okay, so let's have a look at the histogram first. So you want to start with your histogram in terms of tones and tonal range, and Kathy mentioned this before, because with black and white you really want whites to be white and you want blacks to be pretty black, and then you want a full tonal range across that. So let's play with the black end of this first. Okay, so the blacks is going to pull this left hand edge of the histogram slightly further to the left, and I think it's okay to hit the left hand edge very often in a black and white shot, because sometimes black is black, and if you leave black as grey when it should be black, you just don't get the contrast look that you need. So I'm just going to drag to the left and just see what this gives us. So you see the shadows underneath the baby rhino just down here. Now we don't want to lose all the detail completely, but we want them to be dark enough. Okay, so I've moved that black, a good way, 50%, something like that, and it's just darkened this off and it's increased the contrast. Okay, so we've just started to clip the blacks a little bit, and if you just hover the mouse over that little triangle there, you can see in the picture now where the blacks are, and if you click on the triangle, that kind of like leaves it on. So now as you move the black slider, you can see where the complete black areas start coming very easily. Okay, and then you can dial it back so that you've got all the detail if you want that. But there should be some completely black areas because some of these areas are actually black. So that's fine. And then you can do the same with the whites as well. So if you click on that white triangle over on the right hand side, and you can push the whites now until we start to see any blown out areas, and you see they go red. So we can just dial it back so that we don't blow the sky out completely. You see there's a couple of little red bits on that branch over on the left hand side there. We're blowing out the branch a little bit there, so we'll just pull those back until they disappear. Okay, so that the whites actually just needed to come back a little bit to keep things going there. So that's our global edits. Certainly I'm going to play with texture. Now, do we want texture just on the rhinos, or do we want to use this lovely grass in the foreground as well? I think we probably want to use some of this lovely grass. So I'm going to do texture as a global edit and see what happens. So let's bump texture up and see what we get. And notice as we do, texture is a contrast slider. And that's why we're seeing a slight increase in the blacks there, because it's increasing the contrast and it's darkening some of the blacks down. Okay, so we can live with that or not, but it's bringing out quite a bit more of this high frequency detail on the hides, and it's also pulling out a little bit more of the detail in the front. Let's just try a bit of clarity as well, see what clarity gives us. So again, clarity is really darkening off, but it's also making things a lot crunchier. And I'm not sure I like that. We're starting to get artifacting around the heat haze here and stuff, and that starts to look a little bit iffy. It is bringing out the flies nicely though. So you've kind of got to decide, how much of this you want. So maybe just a little bit there, and then we'll just pull those blacks back a little, just to give us some more of that detail back. Okay, so I'm finding those distracting now. I'm going to turn those highlights off. Okay, so we've got a bit more detail now in the foreground. Let's just have a look at before and after. So let's go to just when we converted to black and white in the history panel, so we can go back through our history. So that's before we've made our texture changes. And then if we go up to here and I click, just watch the difference. Bang. Yeah, so there's quite a bit of change now in the texture. Okay, and you can see that in the history panel over there. Now, do we want to do any localized editing? We almost certainly do. I think the eyes could do with a little bit more bringing out. They're beautifully kind of symmetrical in the frame here. This eye here, this eye here. Let's just try a little radial filter. Just pull it. I'm going to kind of just draw a little radial filter like this, and then I'm going to tilt it so that it just is going to brighten slightly the whole of the big rhino's face there. Okay. I don't want it to overspill into this brighter area too much, which is why I've left it just south of the eye a bit. And then I'm just going to do a reset on the effects here. So Alt or Option key on the Windows. You see effect changes to reset as I hold the Alt or the Option key down and then click reset. It just zeroizes everything. Okay. So we've still got that, but there's nothing happening in it now. And then I'm just going to try just lifting the exposure up, just say half a stop, and you see the difference in the face there of that rhino. It's just bringing out the eye and the face just that little bit. And this is what you want. You want these little adjustments that take the eye to important parts of your image. We can right click on the center of that and duplicate it, and now we've got two of those sitting on top of each other, and then I can just drag that across to here, you can see, and then rotate it, and that'll apply the same effect in terms of brightening on this one. Now the light's slightly different on this side, so I'm just going to make it a little bit smaller, and I'm just going to pull the light back just a little bit there. So again, you see it's just opened the eye up a bit, and and we've got a bit more of the detail now on the cheek and stuff like that, which is what I was hoping for. I think we're losing detail on the back here, and also maybe on this very top of the skin there. So there's a couple of ways of doing that. We could use a radial filter, but let's just show you another tool. So let's try just painting this on with the adjustment brush. Okay, so again, Alt or Option key, reset. Okay, so I've got the adjustment brush now that I want fully reset. Okay, and let's just turn the exposure all the way to the top so that I can see where I'm painting. Okay, I want to turn auto mask off. I want flow and density up to 100, and the feather probably, yeah, 85, 90, something like that. And let's just see where what we can just paint. So you can see that I'm just painting up the back there. Okay, a nice soft edge on it, and then what I'm going to do now is just back off the exposure back to where it was at 0, and then just pull it back, say another quarter or half a stop, and that's just bringing the detail back into the ridge of the back there, which was a little bit too blown out for me. And I'm going to do the same so that you turn the brush off and on again. If you don't turn it off and on again, if I paint it again somewhere else, any changes I make would be applied to both brush strokes. But by turning the adjustment brush off and on again, you're separating them, so that now I'm going to make changes on here. So I'm going to make my brush smaller, which is the square bracket keys on the keyboard. So the left square bracket makes it smaller, and the right square bracket makes it bigger. Okay. If you've got a scroll wheel on your mouse, you can just scroll and it'll do the same. And again, I'm just going to paint down here. Okay, there we are, and maybe just a little dab there on the bottom as well. Okay, and then I'm just going to pull that down to just under the 0 again. So pull it back. And you see those two bright areas are now just pulled back enough that you can start to catch all the detail there. Yeah. I don't know that we need to do anything with the back there. I don't think that's blown out. Now what you might do is darken this section here a little bit more. So let's again turn the brush off and on. Yeah. I'm going to just zoom in a little bit on this section. So we go into 1 to 1. Now let's go into 2 to 1. Okay, and I just want to zoom in on the back here, because what I'd quite like to do, if I could, would be just get a bit of separation between the front skin here of the little rhino and the back skin of the mum, or I presume it's the mum anyway. So again, let's go to the and let's just paint dark rather than bright here. Okay, make it a bit bigger. I'm going to take the feather down a bit as well, because I want a harder line. You two, keep the noise down, please, Danny. Right, now I'm just going to brush along here and just try and darken off. Now it's way too dark at the moment. Don't worry about that. We'll come back to that in a sec, okay? But if you like, all I'm doing here very carefully is just brushing so that I'm following the line of the baby rhino's skin, okay, and against the mum, right? And then I just want to try and just highlight the edge of the mum's very carefully doing that. Not too much. And then I'll fill this in. Okay, and then I can just make this much smaller, tiny little brush, just fill in those tiny little bits there, and that's probably just going to go over the edge very slightly. Okay, and then over there, So that's the area that I wanted to darken off a bit, and now I can just increase the brightness on that, and hopefully it will come up. Come on, yeah, there we are. Okay, so let's put it to 0. So if you double click on it, it just goes to 0. Okay, so there's nothing. So now if we just darken that off, just probably even, you know, 1/10 of a stop, or just a little bit. Okay, then what it's going to do is just give us a little. All I'm looking for is just a little bit of contrast between the back plane and the front one. And that might be enough just to pull. Yeah, there we are. It's just taking a second or two to come up. But you see, it just pulls the head off the back just enough to set it off. So then let's just go back to fit and see. And you see, just that little bit has just pulled off the front of the head there. Just very subtly. It's not a huge amount. You might do the same to that area there as well. I'm not going to do that now. It'll take too long. But you're getting my thought process, something like that. Do we do anything else? Subject background corners. I think I'd probably throw a little bit of a vignette on this, just to pull the eye in from the corner, because the corners and the sky and the grass in the foreground are pretty bright. So let's just run down to the effects tab and just throw a little bit of a vignette on. Doesn't have to be a huge one, but just enough that you can see one. So I mean, that's a lot, 38. But if we go to kind of like 28 or 30, it's also just giving us a little bit more detail, that the cloud line there as well, and it's just pulling the grass a little bit darker. So I don't know. I think probably that's where I would go with this. Sandy.
Could you show us how you would remove those two protrusions?
Oh, yes, thank you, Jack. Yes, I'd forgotten about that. Okay, so the clone tool is up here. Okay, so we've got clone and heal. So again, yeah, I need to zoom in a bit. So let's go to 2 to 1 again, and then I can drag that up there. Okay, now, so I'm in the clone tool. Again, the square brackets change the size of the brush. You want the brush to be as small as you can get away with, the center circle of the brush to be as small as you can get away with in terms of what it is that you're trying to clone out. And now, let me show you probably the wrong way of doing it. The wrong way of doing it is use a big brush like this and just do the whole thing in one go like this. Okay, now, generally, this isn't going to give you a very good result. But let's have a look. Okay, let's see what that gives us. Boom. Oh, it's not bad. All right, it's done 80% of the job for us, and you can see where it's taking from here. Okay, so if I just move that square across a bit, we can see that here's my cloned selection area there. We have a dog in the background. Somebody's unmuted. I think it's Jack, is it? Yeah. But
I'll mute myself.
That's fine, Jack. No, it's okay because you're asking the questions. So it's taken from here. Now, if you don't like where it's taking from, you can change that by dragging the button of this one and just moving it around. So you see, I can move that button around, and it will resample from where I move it to, if you like, which will give you a slightly different. And then it'll fill it in, and it'll give you a slightly different kind of fill. Okay, my machine for some reason is having a little bit of a go slow. There we are. Okay, so that's okay to start with. Okay, and actually this shows us a really nice little trick that I can share with you. Okay, so what we now, if we use that as our starting point, we still got to do some more work here, haven't we? But what often happens now is that people say, okay, well, I've done my first clone, I'll try doing another clone. And now they want to come over here, but you see we're within the area of the first clone. So I've not got a clone tool, I've only got a hand. It's only when I move outside that area that I actually get my little circle again. Yeah? And some people get flummoxed by this. Now I'll show you little tricks to stop that worrying you. Okay? If that happens and you still need to work on an area within the first clone tool or one of the existing kind of cloned areas, go down here to where it says Tool Overlay, Auto. Okay? And turn off Auto and just for now select Never. If you turn Never off, it will not show you the previous clone areas. Okay, so that won't stop you now. You see, now I can clone wherever I like. Okay, so now I can go in here and I can draw, say, there again, and say, okay, do your best with that one. Okay, right, there we are. Now you see, I can't see where it's taken from now because I'm not showing the tool overlays. So if I want to see where it's taken from, pop it back on auto, and we can see there's where it's taken from. Okay, and I can change that if I want to, or I can go in and try again. So auto, never. Okay, and now I'm going to make a smaller clone, and I'm just going to try and just get it to do this area here, and see what it can give me. See whether I can get rid of that branch. Okay, so we're looking a lot better there. We may even be able to go in one more time, just a little bit closer. Let's see, I may have gone too close to the skin. Yeah. So Command and Z or Control and Z on a Windows machine just to undo that last spot removal. There we are. I think when we zoom out, that'll be fine. And then this one, again, the same kind of thing. So let's make it a bit bigger. Okay. So I'm just going to do the top bit to start with because I think it can just take that from the sky. Yeah, because that's all the same color. Yeah. My feather's too high, and that's why I'm getting a lot of creep in there, I think. So let's just try that again. There we go. Draw it again. See whether that'll clean that out. Okay, and now let's just try dabbing this as if we were just dabbing with a brush. 1, 2, 3. I'm going to push the feather back up for these ones because I'm getting an edge there, and then I'm just going to find that edge again and just dab there. I don't know. Command Z. Alright, and then I just want to go right into probably 8 to 1. Just see whether we can get rid of this. So let's come right down, pixel size, and then just draw along the back there. That's too close to the back. I think I might have to redo that. No.
Is it helpful to select the rhino and then go to inverse so that everything you do will only be on the other side of the rhino's, the edge of the skin? Or
if you were in Photoshop, Jacques, that would probably be the way to do it. You don't have that capability in Lightroom. So yes, you would do a select and invert. That would be another way of doing it. But in Lightroom, you are constrained considerably in your tool set for doing this kind of thing. So I'm just kind of, all I'm going to do tonight is just show you, how I would do it in Lightroom rather than going out and doing it in Photoshop. So you see that's not working. So again, sometimes you have to try a few times with this spot removal. It can be, sometimes dabbing is better, sometimes drawing a line is better. And sometimes it's just such a pain in the neck. The other thing
you've answered my question. I I do work in Lightroom, at least in Photoshop, so that answers the question.
Super.
I have one other question, that is, with the original shooting of this picture, taking that initial image,
Yeah.
would you have shot it any differently if you were going to turn it into black and white? I know you've worked with what you were given here, but if you were in the field and you decided, I want to make a black and white, would you have changed those settings, and if so, in which way?
That's an interesting one. That's an interesting one. Just let me finish this and then I'll answer that, Jack. So don't let me forget it. So you see, I almost got it there with that last kind of horizontal thing, but I've just got that faint line underneath. Well, what I can do now is I can grab what I just painted in the center there and just pull it down 2 or 3 pixels so that it actually covers. Can you see? It's kind of covering just that little bit more. So I'm just getting that selected nicely now, and it's taking it from up there. So that's actually going to work. So if I come out to fit now, there's all our. We can see all our points because we're in auto. But as soon as I come over to the left-hand side of the screen here, and we get rid, I would still look. It still looks like there's a little bit of work been done there, but you can see how, with a little bit more patience, we could just make that completely invisible, and then you've got rid of that completely. So,
Joe, you told us that it's in the right way and the wrong way, so that was a one way, which should be the other way that you would flow that out.
Well, the wrong way was, what I was expecting was that when I did that big selection at the start, it would look awful, whereas actually it took us 70–80% of the way there. What I would normally do would be take a big chunk like that and do it in 4 or 5 separate sections, rather than just one. But it actually worked out quite well. So that's fine. Now, I think I would be pretty happy with that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to the library module, G.
Joe, can I ask something else?
Yeah, do.
Now, let's say this picture is on my computer, and I've already handed it in as a color picture, and now I want to transfer it to a black and white. Now, but I don't want to, of course, Lightroom already has all my adjustments, but I want to start fresh.
Great.
So when I make a virtual copy, he copies all my. So I'll tell you what I do is that I go like in my history, I go back to my original, and then I do virtual copy, and then I put it back to all my. Is that a normal way to do it?
Yeah, that's absolutely the way to do it. So what Evelyn's saying there is she wants to process this shot 2 ways. She wants to process it as a color shot, and she wants to process it as a black and white shot. So you see, we've got all the history of everything we've just done here, okay? Because this is non-destructive editing. So if we go back to the very first shot, which was this import there. Okay, so there's our shot. I can now right-click on the image, and I can do this create virtual copy. And that, if you like, makes a copy of the image. It doesn't actually duplicate the whole image, but it basically makes a copy of it within the Lightroom catalog, okay, as a color shot. So now I have, in the grid, I have 2 versions of the image, okay, as it, come on, so right click, oh there we are, yeah, so it's just taking a second to catch up. So now I've got my two copies, okay. The virtual one has got this little kind of page pulled up in the bottom left hand corner. I can go back into this one now, D for develop, and there's all my history, and now I can go back to the top of my history and revert that back to my black and white shot. So that will just apply all those adjustments again, and that will make that one the black and white. There we are. and then I can go back to G, to grid view, and we'll see that one of them is black and white, and there's the original colour one, uncropped. Okay. So I'm going to select that one. I'm also going to highlight this set of shots, which is some of the after shots. So there's the one I've just edited, and here is the one Sandy did. So I've selected two images, and I'm going to press the N key now. N is for survey mode, and then Shift and Tab just to close the left and the right. So that's Sandy's original edit, which I think Sandy got a silver. Do you want to unmute, Sandy, and just talk to that? You're muted. You need to unmute. That's it. There we are. Yeah.
Yes, okay, I'm here.
Okay. So yeah. Tell me what.
Yeah, when I entered it, I saw it was grey.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that for me was probably the thing that
it was all just grey, and I knew when I entered it.
Yeah, and I mean, really, it comes back to what Kathy opened up with. You know, first thing she said with black and white is contrast. Whites have got to be white, blacks have got to be black. There's got to be this super contrast, and you didn't really pull the contrast out of the scene as much here. I don't know. Maybe I've pulled too much contrast out here. Maybe I've gone too far. It's, you know, some of it's personal taste, some of it's I don't know. Kathy, Henry, Jack, any thoughts on the processing?
No, it's fine. I think you've done it very nicely. I'm just curious to know what you would have done to the original in the shooting with a potential black and white in mind. Would you have done it differently?
I would. If I'm shooting to black and white, I'm even more careful to shoot to the right. I know I'm going to try and get as much detail out of the highlights as I can. So what I would tend to do is expose as far as I can without blowing the histogram. Because that will give me maximum shadow detail, but I'm not too worried about shadows because I can always pull detail out of the shadows, but it's very difficult to get detail back if you blow your highlights. So you go as bright as you can without blowing your highlights.
That answers the question. Thank you.
And I mean, you have, with your bird shots, what do you normally do? It's minus 1 2/3 stops or something when you're shooting against a bright background, just to
against a dark background. Yeah. Minus 1.7 is common on a dark lake surface. Yeah. But it was a very bright background, bird in the sky, bright sky behind it, plus as much as plus 1.7 to get light under the wings.
Light under the wings, yeah.
One plays with that EV depending on the background.
I mean, from a salon point of view, and I mean, Kathy and Henry, you've got far more experience than me in that. I mean, what about blowing highlights in something like the sky here? I mean, if I've processed this, we hadn't blown the highlights there, but you look at that on the screen, you know, with a projector or whatever, and I can imagine a judge saying, "Oh, yeah, those highlights are blown." What do you think about that?
No, you won't, because what you've achieved there is the contrast, and you've got the beautiful tonal values. With respect, Sandy, if I may just say, if you look at the two of them together, your image appears to be a bit flat, and you want to avoid that flatness, that grey, continuous grey, and be daring, be brave, like Joe was. You can always pull back again, but Joe's one, I love the darks and the lights. That's exactly what you look for in the mono.
And I think the just with any portrait, whether it's people, whether
when I got the silver, I knew immediately.
You've got to work the area around the eyes with any portrait, because that's really where we go, isn't it, with portrait? So I would almost never, not process the areas around the eyes and the cheeks. Very often they need just a little tiny lift. And that makes all the difference. Okay. Alrighty. Let's
Wonderful, thank you.
thank you, Sandy. I hope that was worth the wait. Because it's been quite a wait, I know.
Definitely, thank you so much.
Oh, can I ask you something quickly?
Do, go ahead.
When you when the clarity made the blacks too black, you reduced the blacks. Why did you not use shadows? Lift the shadows instead. I'm just asking.
I could have done. I mean, there's multiple ways of doing all these things. I was just playing with the blacks because I was looking at the histogram and the ends of the histogram. But you're right. I mean, you could just as easily have done a radial filter around here and then just pull the shadows or push the shadows, you know, either way. So that would have been another way of doing it.
Well, that's fine. Thanks very much.
Yeah. Okay. Alrighty. Which one should we do next? Should we have a go to portrait? Yeah? Something that's slightly different. Let's see what we can do with him. Oh, I love this guy. Oh, yes. I like this one. Okay, so D for develop. Let's bring him in. Shut the left-hand side down. Okay. Now, R for crop. Lot of space at the top of the head here. So I'm gonna lose some of that space. So let's try a 5x8 crop, which is a much more. It's generally a much more pleasing crop for portraits and you know head and kind of shoulders crops than the normal 4x3, and it's a more classic portrait size as well, 8x10. So that's there. And you know, if we want to follow the thirds kind of rule, then the dominant eye, which I think in this case is probably his right eye, the one here. If we can pop that on the thirds line, you know, that then we're following the rule perfectly. But you see now we're a bit close to the top of the head. We could maybe just pull down a little bit there. You don't have to be exact, okay, with this third side. I actually quite like. I want to leave a little bit of room above him. I don't want to cut this bit off him here, and I certainly don't want to get too close to his wrist. So let's go there. Okay. Don't be afraid to crop in close when you've got a wonderful face like this. Okay. We could go, you know, we could try just a face crop, but I think given that he's smoking as well, you know, you don't want to chop the hand off. So I think this is a more natural framing. It's leaving. He's looking straight at us, but because his arm is here, we need a little bit of negative space on the right hand side here. So that would work. So let's see what we can do here. So D for develop. And basic tab and black and white, and let's see whether he converts nicely. So, okay, it's all midtones and darks. There's no very brights in this shot. Look at this. Look at this. There's nothing in the kind of whites or the highlights. There's nothing in the whites or the highlights at the moment. So we've got loads of room to play with our exposure. So we can push a little bit, certainly, the exposure. Okay. Now remember, we're going to do some contrast work in a little while. So what I would tend to do with a portrait like this, where I know I'm going to do some contrast work, is I'm going to push the exposure and make it look a little over bright to start with, because I know that I'm going to pull some of that back in a minute or two. Okay, so and don't forget, we're used to seeing the image like this, if you like. That's what our eyes have become accustomed to. So this immediately looks way too bright. That's okay. Just kind of live with it for a minute, and we can come back to it. Okay. Now, is exposure the right way to go? If we do exposure, which is the whole image, we're also exposing the background, and for this one I think what we want to do is that background needs to go dark, because we're actually getting all the the detail on the background, and we don't want that. So I'm going to double click and put the exposure back, and I'm just going to try separating out the tones. So if we work on, say, whites, now you see that's working on the brighter areas of the shot, which are his face and his hair and his ears and his hand. But look what it's not doing to the background. It's not bringing out the background like exposure did. Okay, so we're already separating our tonal variations. And again, with the shadows, I think we can probably darken off the back using the shadow slider. Yeah, you see the back is darkening. Yeah, if we go up and down, the back is darkening and setting the guy off even more. So in this case, I'm going to pull those shadows down even right to the bottom, because that really sets him off beautifully. We've still got enough brightness in here, and you see as I move the cursor just into the frame of the picture, yeah, I get the little plus sign. Now look under the histogram. You've got the RGB values. So R 6.9, G 6.9, B 6.9. So what we've got here is a very dark grey, but it's not quite black. Okay, if we go right to under his collar here, you see, look, R 0.9, 0.9, 0.9. That's almost completely black, but not entirely black. But this is dark enough that it's a nice dark background without being totally black. Try and avoid your portrait backgrounds going pitch black, because pitch black looks wrong. You just need 1 to 6 or 7 as an RGB value, just to give it that very dark grey look. And that also means that you don't have to necessarily put an edge on it either, because it'll stand out against a black projected background. Okay, we're getting there just with the shadows and the whites. I'm liking this already. In fact, I'm just going to push those whites up a little bit more. Now, let's have a look at texture. Texture works on skin beautifully, because skin is high contrast, is very fine detail, and particularly older skin like this that's got the lovely wrinkles and things. Look what happens as you bring that out. It's really bringing out those wrinkles. Now, this is very much kind of personal taste. Yeah, the fashion in salons over the last few years has been for quite over-processed old men with leathery skin stuff. So what we've seen is a lot of that. We've seen a lot of this, okay, where it's just kind of it's almost overdone. It's kind of that almost silvered look, yeah. And it's really, this stuff's just down to personal taste. That is not going to do ever so well in a lot of the salons that I've seen like that. You are going to need to push it a little bit. So you see, the lovely thing with the texture slider is it doesn't affect this back area, because this back area doesn't have any detail in. So texture just leaves it alone. Okay. With clarity is a global change. So it will actually affect the back as well as the front. You can see, look what happens when I push that clarity up. We start seeing all the detail in the background now, because it's applying that contrast variation to the background as well as the foreground. And that's why clarity is not a good tool to use as a global edit in stuff like that. If you're going to use clarity on this, you would apply the clarity with an adjustment brush. So and then we just paint a big adjustment brush like this, and then pop the clarity on just as a pull down like this, something like that, just to draw onto just his face area. with clarity. And then you can see that now we're just affecting the face, and we're not affecting the background. Okay. If that came up in front of me and I was judging, I would be concerned with the hand being too bright, because the hand is quite a bit in front of the face. So I think what we'd need to do here is we'd need to darken the hand off a little bit to, if you like, make the hand recede into the not the background of the photo, but it shouldn't be the first thing that we focus on. It shouldn't be the thing that we see. What we should see is his face, not his hand. So I think I would again take an adjustment brush or maybe a radial filter, and just try darkening off the hand. So I'm going to do that, rotate it, pull it down to say there, something like that. Now take the clarity off, and let's just try the whites. Just darken
so if something has an oval shape, you prefer the radial filter. If it is a different shape, you use the brush?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think in radial filters very often, because it's a lovely pool of light, a radial filter. Yeah. So adjustment brushes, I find, can sometimes give slightly odd looks, because when it's not a standard shape, if you've done a funny odd shape with an adjustment brush, the eye kind of picks that up. Whereas a radial filter is an oval or is a circle, and it's a natural kind of shape with a feather on it and stuff like that, and it just tends to give a slightly more naturalistic effect. Okay. That's what I found generally. So that's why I quite like using radial filters. So you see, what I'm trying to do here is I'm just trying to pull back on that hand. I don't want that hand to be the brightest thing in the shot. Now I think I'm probably going too far here, but what we want is that hand to be, it's got to look realistic, but we really want him to be the thing that we go to, and not his hand. Okay, so maybe that's just, maybe just bring it up a bit more, something like that. Yeah, that might work. And then the other thing I'm going to do, and I'll do it with an adjustment brush for you, Evelyn, rather than with a radial filter. I'm just going to pull his ear up a bit as well. So again, I'm just going to paint on his ear. Now you see there, we can't really see what I'm doing when I'm painting, because all I've got is clarity on. So that's why what I normally do when I start an adjustment brush is zero everything and just bang the exposure all the way up, and then you can see where you're painting. So if I just click on that and hit delete, just get rid of that adjustment brush. Okay, come on, get rid of it. Go. There we are. Right. So now, kill the clarity, put the exposure up, and now I can paint just his ear with the exposure brush. Okay, and now I can dial the, so if you double click on exposure just to dial it down to 0 to nothing, okay, and then you can start playing with it and just seeing how much you need to bring it up. And what I'm doing is I'm looking at his other ear, because the light's pretty much straight into his face, but because his left ear, the one we're looking at, is just slightly further back, it's just a little bit darker, and I just want to bring it up so that it's the same brightness as his other ear. So maybe that kind of a third of a stop, just to give him that little bit more, and it also just pulls the ear just off the background just that tiny little bit as well. Now with a portrait like this, you've got to go and check the eyes. So let's go into say 2:1 or 3:1. Let's just have a look at those eyes. Oh, look at that! just pin, lovely focus on the eye there. Cracking shot. But do we need to just pull his eye out just a little bit? Let's see. So radial filter, draw and just so that we're getting the whole of the eye there. Okay, that's fine. Pull it down a little because I just want the eyeball here to be affected. In a little as well. There we are. Around a bit. And then take the exposure down to the middle again, double click. Now, here's where a localized clarity of normally about half a stop or so can really pay some dividends, because this can really bring out the iris quite a bit. So kind of 20, 25, something like that. And then we might, now clarity being mid-tone contrast can darken things. Okay, so if you're finding when you apply clarity that it's bringing more detail out, but it darkens things off a bit, you very often just have to give a little bit of a nudge on exposure as well. Okay, and you see that's just bringing those whites of the eye out just that little bit more again. And again, there we are. So right click, duplicate, and then we can grab that and move it over here. Obviously adjust the angle for this eye. Come on, Lightroom. It's having a little think. There we are. Okay. And then just let's go back to fit and see what. So let's just turn that off. It's just rebuilding. Right, so there's off. And on. You can see the difference it's making. So I'm just toggling the changes that we've made in that panel. So there's the bright hand and no eyes done, and then this toggles that back, toggles those changes back on. Just let it apply. Yeah, there we are. Okay. So I think we've, by making those little changes with the radial filters there, I think we've just pulled those eyes out just that little bit more, made them a little bit more piercing. I don't know whether this bit of his forehead is just a tad too bright. For me, I'm just gonna do just a radial filter there. And I'm just going to pull the exposure on that down just a quarter, half a stop. Not too far. Just a little tiny bit there. It was just a hot spot on his forehead. And just a tenth of a stop there, 0.13. But it's just taken that hot spot off. I think I would be pretty happy with that. Is this yours, Kathy? Yeah? What do you think?
Mm-hmm.
You're muted, yeah.
I'm unmuted. Oh, I love it. Thank you, Joe. I love it. I'm glad I've got a few others that I can go and practice.
Yeah, there wasn't a lot to do on it. I mean, it was a beautifully taken shot, and I mean the depth of field is fabulous. You pin sharp on the eye, and I mean he's got this lovely face and gaze, hasn't he? So
thank you.
But yeah, that's a lovely one. How we do?
Just a question at the start. You mentioned you were talking about the ratios 10, 8, 5, 7. Why do you restrict yourself? Why don't you just go freeform and crop the thing the way you would like to see it? What's the purpose?
Very often with portrait shots, they want to be in a frame. Yeah, you know. So if you're going to frame them, and you stick to one of the standard portrait, one of the standard ratios, it's going to be good to frame. Yeah, I mean, as you've seen from previous sessions, Jacques, I mean, I'm all for free crop. Whatever works is best. I just generally start with 8x10 with portraits, because I don't know, it must be something to do with the human form and the Vitruvian man ratios or whatever. But 8x10 seems to work for this kind of an image. If it didn't, then I would not be shy in adjusting, off it. Yeah. Would you have framed it differently, Jack? Would you have framed it?
I tend to free crop.
Yeah.
But if I'm doing 4 pictures for posting somewhere, then I tend to pick a frame, a 5/7 or a 10/8, and make the 4 the same. But generally, with a picture like this, I would look at it and choose to crop where when taste dictates. It happened. What you've done here, I think, is perfect. The space on the right-hand side and so on. I was just curious that you were using that as a starting point. But I take your point about it being a standard, convenient portrait shape.
Yeah. I mean, the other thing, I don't know, Kathy. I might just I just might clone those out on his shoulder there. I just find that a little bit distracting.
Yeah, easy that.
Yeah, easy to do. Yeah, but I think yeah. I mean, again, that's just a dead easy clone. But yeah, I think I would take those out. I think those are just a tiny little distracting element there. So
what about just pulling out some of the more detail on that left-hand shoulder? You won't take the help a bit? No, that's the right hand, the left hand. That's there.
This one. You want to brighten this up a bit?
No, on his left-hand shoulder.
This one.
Yeah, if you lighten that up a bit and bring out a bit of detail in the shoulder, rather than losing it in the background.
Yeah, because you're saying we've not got a line, kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah. We could try. Well, let's try it. Let's have a play. That's what we're doing, isn't it? If we just drew like that, I mean, even that, rather than exposure, let's just pull shadows. Yeah, enough detail there. We've just now got a bit of a line, haven't we? Yeah, just by pulling the shadows there. Yeah, so that. Yeah, little things like this are the things that make the difference. So, yeah. I'm conscious that we've taken an hour and 10 minutes already. Do people want a quick 5-minute break and then we'll continue? Yeah.
It just makes us nostalgic. 50 years ago, we only had the black and white, and the only thing that we could do to them was with waggling things under the enlarger and getting a print and such like. Yeah. We went to color, and now we've got into Lightroom and digital images, and we've forgotten what we used to do. It's a greater art form actually, because you have to do more to make that picture take its message across, or fit in with what our classic concept of an artistic black and white image is.
Yeah. I mean, we've processed 2 images, and we've done an hour and a quarter. And I mean, normally I'm pretty fast processing, but mind you, I'm talking through it as we go through it and stuff. So that's fair enough. Okay. All right. Let us go to G and see whether we've got a different image we could process then. So what else have we got that we could process? I don't know. We've got these wildlifey ones. Henry, pick an image.
Well, if I may, I'd like to actually the rural lady or the African lady there, because I think often we have problems with the skin tones to not overdo it or not do enough.
Yeah, right.
The different tones of gray.
Okay, let's see where we can go with her then. Yeah, she's rather fantastic, isn't she? Yeah. Okay. Now it's interesting because I wouldn't normally have thought of this one as a black and white image because the colours are so wonderful, kind of in it. But let's try it and see whether it works. Yeah, you know, we can compare before and after and have a look. In fact, let's do that. Let's do a right click. Let's do a virtual copy. Okay, and then we'll edit this one to black and white, and then we can compare it against the colour one later and see which one we like best. So D for develop. Sure, it's a portrait one, so we'll leave the left-hand panel open when it comes up. There we go. Okay, so I mean it's cropped. Okay, I just want to try some. I just want to try losing the apple and just doing a head and shoulders here. So R for the crop tool, and again, apologies, Jacques. 4x5, and let's just zoom it in a little bit. We've got to get a top knot there. Subject background corners. So where we were before, we don't want those little bits jumping in and that's falling out of frame. So I would put her over here and leave some space because she's looking that way. So she needs a bit of negative space to look into, and then leave that there. I'd also straighten up because the horizon behind her isn't straight. So let's just do that. It's only a couple of degrees, but it's the kind of thing that really bugs you once you're aware of it. All right, so I don't know. It's maybe a bit too close. I don't know that apple is doing anything for me though. That's the thing. I don't know. What do you think, Henry, Kathy, anybody else? What's a good crop here? I'm kind of.
I like this crop piece.
Yeah. We'll work on that then. Yeah. Okay. So I mean, you know, again, I try and make the face as big as possible. I try and make the subject, the person, as big as possible in the frame, unless it's really an environmental portrait where you've got them in a workshop or you've got them, you know, surrounded by stuff that matters. We've got enough of her environment here in the background that we can see that she's kind of, you know, out in the bush, and we've got a little bush in there. So I mean that's fine. That gives us enough context, I think. We've got to sort this out. You can see on the histogram we've got something very close to the right hand edge there, which is this very white spot on her forehead. So let's just pull down on the highlights and just see whether we can just pull that back, and we certainly can. We can pull that back a good way. We can't completely get rid of it, but we can soften it quite considerably. And then I think if we just do a bit of a radial filter here, and maybe even just drop the exposure. Now we can't go too much because we're going to get a kind of halo on her head. So maybe not exposure. Maybe just in the radial filter we'll do highlights again and just see whether we can pull things back. Using the highlights and maybe even the whites. See, the whites are just pulling that back a touch now, and because she's got a dark skin underlying it, pulling down the whites isn't really going to have too much of a detrimental effect. But the difference between the before and the after there. Let's just go back to, here's the radial, that's before we did any of that adjusting, okay, and then those adjustments have brought us down to that. Okay, so there's quite a difference there. Now look at the edge of her hair with that radial filter there just straying off into the sky. Look what's happened to it. Can you see there's a kind of like a grey seepage into the sky? Just a very slight one where the edge of that radial filter is. So the way you fix that is, let's just click on the radial filter to select it, and then go to the brush. Okay? And what we want to do is we want to hold the Alt key down, or the Option key. Okay? Make the brush nice and small. And what it's actually going to do, when you're brushing away like this, it's actually the circle that's got the minus in. The third circle there, the dark circle that's kind of got a minus on. That's what actually is the eraser. So I'm going to click and just drag, and you see it's erasing that greyness in the sky. I could just paint it away. So that's taken away the effect of the radial filter that was drifting out into the sky. Okay, so that's that brush tool. I'm just holding the Option key down to get the minus on it. All right, so we've sorted out the forehead as probably as best we can. We might need to do a similar thing on the nose as well. So again, let's do just a quick radial filter just on there. It's not as bad as it was on the forehead, so we may just be able to get out with the whites. So let's just pull the whites back. Yeah, okay, that's enough. We've got all the detail back now. There's nothing blown there, so we're evening things out. Now, eyes. The eyes are the mirror of the soul, aren't they? So we've got to bring these eyes out a little bit more. So again, I'm going to go to radial filter. I'm going to go into 1:1. Now let's go to 2:1. Okay. Now she's just a tiny bit soft. I'd say it's probably motion blur. Let's just go back and see what the shutter speed was on this. Have a look. But she's not pin sharp, so you'd have to be very careful about putting this into a salon. What have we got? So it's a 70mm Tamron lens, 160th of a second. Okay, so it's probably motion blur rather than. But I mean, you've got a fast enough shutter speed at 70mm, but it's definitely soft. So let's go back into develop and see what we can do with our eyes, just to bring them out just that little bit. And we're only talking tiny little increments here. I think probably shadows rather than exposure, because it's a little bit more subtle. That might be enough. It's just bringing out the eyes a little bit there, and you see we've got. We can even feather it a bit more. Put the feather all the way up, and then duplicate it. Bring it over there. Rotate it, make it a little bit smaller so that it's just affecting that eye socket. Something like that. Come back out to fit. So let's see whether that's done anything. Yeah. So as I click on radial filter, watch the eyes now. Watch them change. Boom. Just brought them out just that little bit by just giving those out a bit. You've got to be very careful not to overdo it, otherwise it just looks like sci-fi. I think we can do more with the detail in here, but let's put this into black and white now, and see whether it's giving us anything more. Now we've gone to black and white. Her skin, I think, could do with a little bit more brightening. So again, my favourite tool. Let's do the whole head. Rotate it to select the head, like that. Now exposure I don't want, I'm going to use shadows, because exposure would brighten up these whites even more again, and it's too much already. In fact, I would pull exposure down on the whole scene a little bit, but look what the shadows is doing. It's bringing her out now. We don't want to make her grey, but we do want to bring out the detail. So I'm going to push exposure, and then within this radial filter I'm also going to push some texture. Just see, now look what that's doing to her hair and her skin there. It's bringing out all this lovely detail here. It's bringing out the detail on her forehead and stuff like that. And then maybe I'm just going to pull the highlights down as well, just to bring the highlights down on that. Danny, your time has just gone off.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. That's fine. So that's fine with that. Now, yeah, I don't know. Let's just try painting in some clarity here. Bring the clarity all the way up so that it's crazy up, and then let's just see what difference it makes. Oh wow! Look at that. Look at the difference between the stuff that's got the clarity on already and the stuff that hasn't. So I think painting these beads with clarity is giving us some beautiful extra that we wouldn't have got before, and then just make it a bit smaller as we go around her neck so that we're not applying the clarity to the bush in the background. Again, just make sure you've got all of them done. So that's full clarity. We might even just go for those just even whiter, just pull them, look, really pop that white by just everything that we've just painted. Just give it a little bit more detail and stuff like that. Okay, and maybe some sharpness as well, just to really ping it out. We'll do. Sorry, Danny's left the door open. I'm just going to shut the door. If we go down to the black and white tab here, we can also play with the colours in the image, because I can't remember what they were, but let's play. So I think some of the beads were yellow. So let's try the yellow slider and see what happens. Yeah. Okay. So this is now affecting anything that was yellow in the image is being affected by this slider. See, so it's mostly background by the look of it. But we could pull. What I quite like here is that what this is doing is pulling the background down a bit, which is making her jump off it a bit more. So I'm quite liking that. Let's try the green. What the green does. So these are green beads. All right. So we can use the green, and we can that's just selecting the green in the beads, you see, and we can make those pop. So we can really make them pop like that. Now, do we want the beads to pop to the extent that they become the focus rather than her? And that's something you've got to kind of decide, and you've got to choose when you process an image like this. So I'm just going to dial them back enough that they're detailed, but they're not so drawing the eye that they become totally the focus of attention. Don't think there's much going on in the aqua range there. Blue. Oh yeah, blue. There's some blue in those beads there. Okay, so we can make those light or we can make those dark. Okay. And again, that's kind of personal choice, isn't it? So do you want them dark or do you want them, I like them black. I'm going to leave them black. Purple ones now. Purple is going too dark on her shoulder. So I'm going to bring the purple up a little bit there. It just brings these beads out on her shoulder a bit more. And then magenta. It's actually working on her skin tone, isn't it? So let's see what we're getting. I think the magenta, as we push it, it's smoothing her forehead details quite a bit, and it's also bringing out the shoulder. So I'm going to leave the magenta up at the top there. Now, orange and red, certainly in Caucasian skin, orange and red would normally make a huge amount of difference. I don't know. Let's see what happens with. Right. So yeah. So we're definitely getting some brighter stuff on her cheek, which is rather nice. It's giving us a little bit more contrast here, the orange. So let's work with that. I like that. And then let's play with the reds and see what we get with red. Okay, so red's just really playing with those beads again. So let's leave the reds as a mid-tone so that we've got some transition between the dark beads and the bright beads there. I'd probably be pretty happy with that in terms of what I was looking for. Again, but now we've converted to black and white. I still want to do a little bit more on that hot spot because it's too hot still. See what we can do with it. Pull that exposure down a little bit more on the hot spot. Now, one thing you can do with a radial filter is you can duplicate it to kind of double the effect on it. So if we do that and duplicate it, it kind of stacks one on top of another, and then you've got two lots of highlights being applied. So you see there's two lots of highlights being applied. Now that's too much, so I'm going to delete that top one, and I'm going to set the pins to never, and I'm just going to go in with another radial filter here and just do highlights on it because the other one had exposure as well. So radial filter, turn the clarity down on it. We can't see the radial filter at the moment, but it is there, and if I turn those highlights down, we'll see that it's affecting the highlights and whites. I think he's upstairs. Would you shut the door, please? Because I'm on the call. Thank you. Right, there we are. We've sorted out her forehead. That's grand. And then I might do a similar one. You can have that for a few minutes, yeah. Similar one down here. Take the clarity out. Take the highlights down. I'm on a call. Would you go in the other room, please? Thank you. There we are. Yeah, I think I'd be pretty happy with that. Now I'm going to put those pins back on, and again I want to just brush off the edge of that. So Alt, and then just brush off the edge. Can you see there? It's just taking off the application of that darker area around her skin. Yeah. Done. Comment?
And Joe, on the right-hand side of her beads, I think you just went a little bit over. There's, if you
Just
could
here.
brush that out.
Let's see.
Yeah.
Let's see. Was that a That was an adjustment brush, wasn't it? So we can do the same thing. So there's the adjustment brush. So you click on it. Okay. So now it's selected. And now you do the same thing with the brush. So Alt, and then just down here, and just brush that away so that it's not affecting it. Yeah, well spotted. Super. Yeah. You might do a little bit of work to darken off that bit on the lip as well, just to soften it off like these. But I think that would probably be it. Let's go back to G and have a look at the two of those together. So N for survey mode, and then Shift and Tab to shut the left and right down. I'll just close the door here. So I don't know whether I would process that to black and white or not. I like the colour. I think I would probably leave it in colour because I think the colour is so wonderful. But do the kind of processing on the face like I've done. But I think I would retain colour for that one. I don't know. What do the rest of you think on that one? It's,
Joe, I feel that the light on the top lip there seems to stand out more than the rest. I think it should have been treated the same as the balance of the highlights.
It should. I'm just not going to do it because we don't have time to kind of do every single time. But you're right, Toy. You're right. Yeah, you'd have to do the same thing. Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah. Henry, Kathy, Jack, what do you think?
I agree with you. I prefer it in colour.
Yeah.
But you've done some wonderful processing. Don't misunderstand me. But I love it in colour.
Yeah. Yeah, and this is it. I mean, this is the thing. You know, sometimes you do process a shot and do your best, and it's still better the way it was, kind of, or it's better in colour than it is in black and white. But the more you do this, the more you kind of come to that, and you know, and this is where having the two of them next to each other like this always helps.
I think what you're doing, Joe, is that you're actually showing the author, I don't know whose photo this is that you actually, in black and white, you really need to use the different tones of grey.
Yes.
And that's what you've actually highlighted there, showing us how you can play with the colours. So, as you said, it's up to the individual whether they prefer it in colour or in monochrome.
Yeah.
Obviously, the author did submit it to see what you could do with it in mono.
Yeah. Yeah, but I mean, a lovely shot. I mean, whose is this? Is this one of yours, Sue, or is this one of Kathy's?
Evelyn, I think.
It's Evelyn's, is it? Oh, this is one of Evelyn's. Lovely. Yeah, super. Oh, yeah, she had to go. All right, but okay. All right. We got time for one more?
Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry, a question from Tim. That dark grey line on the horizon, is there any way of toning it down specifically to sort of blend it in more with the background?
Yeah, I mean, if you, so let's have a look. We're going to develop, and yeah, I mean, you can do either. I mean, right, there's a radial filter, okay, and if I undo the clarity on it, that will pretty much take it away. Yeah, because clarity is mid-tone contrast. So there's one way. Just undo the clarity. You could also probably just pull it back in terms of shadows. Go the other way, rather brighten the shadow area up. It's not going to be as effective. If you expose, it's going to brighten out the background as well. Yeah, the declarity thing is the most effective way with a line like that. It'll just pretty much blend it back into the background. Yeah, a lot of people don't think about going the other way with clarity, but it can be very powerful.
Declarity.
D means take it to minus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very good.
That's where it was before. And if we just take the clarity out of it,
Damn, it's such a good tip that.
If there's one tip you took away tonight, Kathy, that'll be it, wouldn't it? Wonderful, wonderful. Okay, right. Let's do one more then, because we've got a few more minutes, haven't we? Okay, so all right. Henry chose that one. Kathy, choose me another one.
If you go to the bottom 3 buildings, right at the bottom, there you see the arch.
Yeah.
That one. Do you think that could work with contrast?
Yeah, this is one of my street.
The repetition and all that is very detailed. I'd love to see what you could do that.
It's funny that when I processed this one originally, this was a one-click process, pretty much one click kind of. So yeah, we can certainly try this one. Let's do this. So D for develop then. Let's have a look. And I'm going to open it up because it's a landscape.
So it's your image.
Yeah, this is one of mine. This is one of my street images that I shot. So this is central Dublin, and this is a distillery, a brewery. Right off, I think it's Tara Street, where the Irish Times building is, in Tara Street. But I just pointed the camera through some railings and looked down this lovely archway. And I just love the form of the archway and the light kind of pooled here with the dark behind it. And obviously, all the lines, the converging lines, and just like you said, the detail. And I mean, this to me, this screams for a black and white conversion. So let's start straight away and just drop it into black and white. And I think, just look at that from colour, okay, where you've got kind of distracting elements like this colour here and the bin colour and all the rest of it. And it just kind of like simplifies it, doesn't it? Immediately, it just simplifies it. Now, for me, with this kind of an image, the first thing I'm going to do with it, in terms of black and white, is clarity. Okay, I just love look what clarity does to an image like which that's grey, and look at the mid-tone contrasts come out in that. I mean, you almost don't need to do anything else. Just clarity gives you this bang from that, which is okay. Boom, yeah, instant impact. Wow, yeah. Texture.
How much clarity did you use there?
Now I went up to 80. I mean, pretty much the whole thing. Just bang it all the way up. Yeah. I mean, this is stone. This is brick. This is dust and grime and grot, and so you almost can't get enough clarity. So I bang it all the way up, and what I'd also do is probably go about halfway with texture, because texture brings out the micro. So just watch what happens to the wall and to these paving slabs as I push the texture. Boom! It's just like this mist disappears, and you've got this pin sharp detail coming out. It's incredible what a raw file has got in it. And these two sliders in urban stonework are just awesome. Now, by doing those, we've blown some highlights. Just very slightly, we've blown some highlights. If I click on that circle, look up in the window just here, okay, and you can see the highlights blowing up there. So let's leave them on. And then let's just pull the highlights down just until they disappear out of the window. So we'll just pull the highlights back. So it just pulls those overblown bits and gives us all our detail back. Okay, and then I might just push my whites just a tad more, just like that. Okay. Now, do I want to do anything else to this? Let's go to the Transform tab and just check our verticals. So I'll draw a line here down that vertical there. I'll draw, here's a strong vertical on this side. There. Yeah, so we've got a couple of degrees of tweak to do there, but not a lot. It's pretty much straight. And then it's really just a matter of, do I want to crop it at all? Do I want to change the detail? Do I want to lose this? Subject, backgrounds, fine, corners. This might be a distraction in the corner. So if this is a distraction in the corner, and do I want to maybe just focus on the arch there and just lose that distraction in the corner? In which case, do I need quite as much width? I like the width. I like the way the arch is on the left-hand side. So it's the left-hand 2/3, if you like, of the image. But I also like a little bit of lead-in from the left. So, I might leave a little bit of lead-in, and that gives me a bit more depth before we start to hit there. Maybe something like that. That's probably just a slightly better crop. I don't think I want to bring out the darker areas anymore here, because it's just accentuating the archway, and I love the archway. Can we do even more by taking the eye just a little bit more down there? Now, what I would do there is I would just maybe pull the shadows up a little bit in the background, just to see if I can pull the eye down into that arch even more. But I'm not sure that it actually really needs it. I think it's just a form. It's such a beautiful form shot list that I'm really kind of tweaking where things don't actually need tweaking. Maybe
don't do it, I do. Don't overdo it.
Don't overdo it. Don't overdo it. No. And I think any more is going to overdo it. I mean, I think that is. Let's go back to a before and after. So that's after. That's before. So bang, and then boom. It just kind of jumps out at you, doesn't it? So, yeah. Golly, that was a quick one. That was a quick one. There wasn't much to do with that one. So, okay, so let's. Jacques, you're still on the line. Pick our last one, Jacques.
That buffalo.
The buffalo.
The buffalo?
Yeah. This one or the one on the right?
No, this. No, the one on the right, on your right, the one with the yellow. No, the other one. This one.
Yeah. Okay.
Let's see what you would do with that.
Okay. Let's see what we can do with this one then. Lovely. Yeah. I mean, this is it's a beautiful high contrast image. So I mean, there's lots to work with here. This cries out for a black and white conversion because I don't know, the orangey light isn't, I don't think, that flattering to the animal, but we've got incredible detail. We've got fantastic focus on this. So yeah, I mean, this one I think is going to be lovely as a black and white conversion. So let's see what we've got. I don't know, to me it just looks a little bit lopsided. It looks like it's slightly down to the left. So I'm just going to try just maybe pulling that around, something like that. You see the tips of the two horns? Use the tips of the two horns as a reference point. Now, those are both about the same height now, aren't they? So that would be the yeah. There's quite a bit of difference there, and I'm gonna go back to my 4x5 and just see whether that is a. No, we need more. Right. So open it up. So open it up to the left because we need a little bit of space for it to run into, to gaze into. So we've got a little bit of room there. we've got enough room above him that he's good to go. We're getting the detail in his neck nicely, and we're putting a little bit of room off on the right for him to stare into. Let's go something like that. Oh yeah, let's go something like that. Okay, now back to basic, black and white. And this is, we're going to get some beautiful texture out of this. Okay, so the black and white has really straight away brought out this lovely kind of silvering of the detail on his horn. It's just wonderful. Maybe pull the highlights down a little bit to start with, just not too much though. Golly, there's a huge amount in this file. So the highlights, we don't want to blow too far, but I think there's a lot to be brought out of shadow here. Let's just see what shadows give us. I don't want to bring the background out though. You see, shadows at the moment is a global edit, and it's making the background really noisy. So let's leave that background nice and black. And I think we're just going to have to do this with an adjustment brush. So big brush, a lot of feather. Let's just, I just want to make the flow and the density about 50% and just see where we can brush on this. So let's just see where we're going to brush to the size. Come on, give me some, a little bit more flow and density. I'm not seeing what I'm doing. Okay, right, let's start again. Flow and density 75, 80, something like that. Okay, and exposure is up. Okay, so I can see now where I'm, right. Okay, now look at the detail that we can pull out of this side. Now I want to even the face up a bit. So it's probably too much. That's fine, because we can just dial it back now. Okay, there we go. And then I probably want to do the same to this horn. Leave the rest of the animal, maybe the ear as well. So what I'm going to do is turn that off and on again, and then just try applying it to the horn. Make it a bit smaller before we go any further. And then a bit smaller again. And then dial that back. So the horn is out, but it's not too far gone. Lovely. Do the highlights a little bit on that just to soften it, and then push the exposure up. Yeah, maybe the same with the ear. Same thing, off and on, so that this is a separate edit. So you're just dodging and burning. You're dodging, aren't you? This is dodging just these individual elements, and this is why you keep turning it off and on, so that we've got one adjustment brush, two adjustment brush, three adjustment brush. Whereas if you'd just done this as a whole edit, you wouldn't have been able to control it as well. And then you see you can go back in now, and you can make fine adjustments of each of the areas now that you've got the three areas kind of pulled out. So it's fine. Now, one thing that I probably would do as a big general area edit across the whole of this. So there we are, we select everything. Okay, is turn the exposure off and just push the texture up. So let's just see. It almost doesn't need it. I mean, the texture is phenomenal on the fur anyway. Let's just see whether it brings out any more detail, because it's just breathtaking what you have got out of this. And you see, the nice thing about the texture slider is it'll ignore all that background, so you don't have to worry about creeping into the background like you do with the clarity slider. So that's fine for that one. Off and on again, and then I'm just going to try another one just to touch on the fur down here. Okay. Again, we can see where it's applying the changes with that exposure. Double click to zeroize the exposure, and then let's just apply some texture to the fur, and you see, look, it just pings it out, just pings the fur out even more, and we can just pull that up there just so that it affects the back. But really, I just wanted to pull that out. Turn it off. Now, have we got? Is it too bright? No, let's just close the right hand panel. Let's try seeing this without. If I go full screen, F. Let's see. Does it load in full screen? It's just loading at the moment for me. Are you seeing that now on the screen? Yeah. So we're not seeing any distractions now. We're just seeing the image. Now, do we need to do something? Are these too bright? If you were judging this, Kathy, would you be calling this out, or do we need to tone this down a little bit?
We could do, but I'd be so impressed. I don't think I'd notice. You've done a great job here. My goodness.
He's lovely, isn't he? He's wonderful.
It's right from the outset, he lent himself to this interpretation, I think.
Oh, didn't he? Yeah.
He's very dramatic. You can almost darken him a bit, make him more sinister almost.
Yeah.
But that white stripe on the on his left horn, wouldn't you just soften that out?
We just soften that out? Yeah, let's try that then. Let's see whether we can do that then.
Just,
yeah. Now this is the kind of thing. This is where having multiple pair of eyes on an image when you're editing it is just wonderful, isn't it? So so let's go to the adjustment brush and just do a tiny little line down there like that. Just draw it down. There we are, and then so we can see where we were drawing, and then that's probably just a highlights adjustment, probably, is it? Just to knock off the highlight a little bit, maybe. Yeah, highlights or whites. Let's try white to see whether that gives it a better look.
It's just too symmetrical in its present position and form.
It is.
And if you soften it completely, it takes you back to the eyes and the nose. That aloofness of the eyes is quite incredible.
I mean, what you might do, I mean, if it depends, it's black and white, isn't it? So we can edit.
Yes, you can manipulate.
Right, so then maybe we just clone it out. Maybe we just take the line out, and we or heal it. So if we do a heal, we grow the brush just that little bit, just the size of the line, and then we just draw along the line. Let's see what the heal will do to that. No, I don't think that's going to work. If it takes it over there. Oh, no. Now you see where the heel's taking it from. It's taking it from the fur. And what I want to do is that I just want the heel to take it from just above.
Got it. That's perfect.
So there we are. We just move it up to there instead of for the fur. And now look.
Beautiful.
Now you're telling the heel where to go for its original, and we're done. That's it. So that's how you can select that stuff very, very easily.
Joe, just for kicks, drop the light on it and take the brightness down. I just want to see what the effect is. If you
just the overall exposure, yeah.
just take the exposure down, because it's such a powerful picture, and
It is.
I almost see him staring out of the darkness at one rather than looking into a spotlight. Now that's dull.
Yeah, we need to just.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah, that's just 0.5%. Yeah, I mean, if we just dial the highlights down just a tad, it's just.
On my screen, it looks beautiful. It really looks at that level, like you've got it now.
Yeah.
It's very dramatic.
It
very
is.
beautiful.
Cool.
Joe, would you be able to do anything about that very dark shadow in the sort of loop of the left-hand horn and the shoulder? That very dark spot.
That's cleaned out.
Well, we could clone this into there.
Okay.
Yeah. So if we, I mean, it would take a little while, but I mean, what I would do there is I would clone rather than heal probably, and I would do a draw like that and tell it to take it from here. So and you see it's gone off somewhere different, so that's fine. So we just drag that down to here and just tell it to pull from here, something like this. And you see how that would now build up quite quickly. Those two. So you can't really see very well because it's on auto, but it's only gone to never. But you can see we've almost filled it in straight away. There, so you do a couple of those, and that would be gone. Yeah, you see it up there. Do it again. Clone down there, and then just tell it to take it from here again. It may figure it out itself, but if it doesn't, we can again. Oh, I don't know where it's taking it from. Let's have a look. All right, it's gone way over here. So then you just bring this down again. Say no, take it from down here instead. Okay, and there we are. And now you have it. Oh, right. So this is a before and after coming up. Come along. Come along, Lightroom. Oh, I didn't want that one. I wanted. I wanted to show us the. No. Come along. Before and after. You keep clicking on these and it gives you the two there, and the other one, the other way should give the side by side. So there we are. Yeah, it works on black and white, this, doesn't it?
Yes, the eyes are just so much more compelling in the black and white version.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a fabulous shot. Yeah, kudos to her.
Thank you very much. That was very lovely.
Super. Yeah, and we're out of time. So, yeah, that was fun. That was fun.
That was wonderful. Thank you, Joe.
Thanks, Joe.
Oh, you are amazing. Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Thanks, Joe.
Always enjoy processing black and whites. So yeah, that's great. And remind us what's the next judging, Kathy, in a couple of weeks. What's the set subject?
Long exposure.
Oh, really? Oh no.
Yes.
I can't do that.
because you gain, for your book.
Yeah.
If you see any you like, that you might want to use for your book.
Yeah.
That was the whole plan. Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you. Well, I mean, several people have sent me some super shots in already, which is wonderful.
Good.
So definitely going to be using some of them. So yeah, that's great. Right. Okay.
Thank you, Joe. Love to
Joe.
be and
Right. Thanks,
Wonderful.
everyone.
Very nice.